Crime. From cold cases to serial killers, missing persons, and more.
100% he did this.
I'd go off into fantasy world.
How much more lucky can you get that you're not on death row?
You want to know what we know.
My name is Jay. This is Guilty of Crime.
Hello, everybody. Today we really do have breaking news. And no, I'm not late, Carly. Breaking news today. O.J. Simpson dies at 76 years old of prostate cancer. If you haven't heard, you're hearing here first. We're going to run through this and talk about O.J. Simpson, what he died from, and a little bit of, the social media stuff and what people are saying. Do we still believe that O.J. Simpson, do we still believe that he killed Nicole Simpson? I don't know. What do you guys think? Let's play this and then we'll talk about it. I'll show you some clips. And I had to come on. It is breaking news today. And, I don't know what to feel about it. I watched the trial and I watched him run away in his Bronco, which after that famously, well, it wasn't famous until him. Everybody had white Broncos after that. Let's listen to this, and then you can talk.
I'm Diana Sato. We're coming on the air because we have breaking news. O.J. Simpson has died. His family says Simpson died yesterday, saying he succumbed to his battle with cancer, surrounded by his children and grandchildren. It was revealed in February that Simpson was battling prostate cancer, but he refuted rumors at the time that he was in hospice care. ABC News audio reporter Alex Stone joins me now on the phone. Alex, what do we know at this point?
Well, Diane, his family, as you mentioned, says that he died yesterday. We believe in Las Vegas, where he had been living. It was only a couple of weeks ago where he had refuted the claims that he was in hospice care right around the Super Bowl.
Wow.
Word had come out that he may have been in hospice care, and he put out a video on X saying that he was fine, looking like he was going to go golfing. His impact on Southern California and really the world cannot be overstated. Going back to his time in the NFL and at USC and then the NFL, then the infamous trial in the 90s for the double murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. He was acquitted of that. There were a number of years where he was in and out of the headlines, and then we covered for a number of months the hotel room armed robbery case in Las Vegas. He ended up going to prison for that, got out, had been living in Las Vegas. His family now saying on X that he has died, Diane.
Alex, he became such a national focal point during that trial for the murders of his wife and his ex-wife at the time and her friend. What legacy does O.J. Simpson leave behind now so many years later?
Well, I think that depending on how one looks at O.J. Simpson, there is the football part of it, the star that he was, the Hertz commercials running through the airport. He was the biggest of the big star before that trial. And then the shock of the trial. There are many Americans who will always believe that he committed that double murder, others who believe that he did not. You remember the lines that came out of that. If it does not fit, you must acquit. The impact of that trial, for those who were not alive during that time or not old enough to remember it, was incredible. The whole world watching that trial during that time, the whole world watching TV and listening to the radio, waiting for that verdict to come down. And then when it came down, much of America did not agree with it. And then he was sometimes almost comically in and out of the headlines over many years. And then to get in trouble again in Las Vegas, to get back his own memorabilia. He got into the memorabilia trade and selling his items over many years, and then went into retirement, always claiming he was looking for the real killers of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. There were always those who were saying he wasn't doing enough to do that if he really was not involved in the murders. But he then went into retirement in Florida and Nevada and had been relatively quiet over the last couple of years.
All right.
Yes.
Alex Stone, thank you. And again, we have breaking news that O.J. Simpson has died. His family says he succumbed to his battle with prostate cancer O.J. Simpson was 76 years old.
All right, everybody. So prayers to the family. We definitely don't want to speak ill of the dead. But what I did want to say today is that I want to let you know O.J. Simpson died at 76. This is breaking news. It just came out, and welcome tens Hoovian. I don't want to speak ill of him, but are we ever going to know now if he killed Ron Goldman and Nicole Simpson? Will we ever know that? You know, this was, like Carly said, this was one of the first trials that she watched in totality. Me too. I'm the age where I remember watching the trial and watching him run away in the white Bronco. So it brings a lot of questions. We do send prayers to the family. I do want to show you a couple of clips that came out. TMZ, of course, hit this first. What TMZ always got the juice. I think of them kind of a gossip station. I try to not gossip so much, but tell what is happening, what's going on, and the real deal, which you're going to hear today about Sebastian Rogers. It's going to be a trigger warning, everybody. So tonight at 6:30, trigger warning when you listen to this later. All right, so let's read this together here. Well, I'm going to read it to you. You can see that what TMZ said. 8:57. That was an update on 4/11, which is today at 7:34 a.m. The Goldman's attorney, David Cook, tells TMZ OJ died without penance, adding that while he may be gone, his multi-million-dollar judgment is not, and the Goldmans are interested in discerning what money and assets he may have had left, but what they can collect. Cook goes on to say they'll be exploring options now that OJ is dead, including figuring out whether he left behind a fund with the estate that they can pounce on. That sounds terrible, right? Pounce on his estate after the man dies. I'm sure he has other family, and that does kind of suck. Yeah, the dad Kardashian, you're going to see in a second. I'm reading that. It was the dad, whatever. Caitlyn Jenner. I don't even know what, at this point, Caitlyn Jenner, what name was, but Caitlyn Jenner, who used to be close friends with O.J. Simpson, tells TMZ and also tweets, "Good riddance." She has since posted on X, and I have that post as well. Thank you, Carly. And then 8:20, Tom Lang says, one of the lead detectives who work in the OJ case tells TMZ he has nothing to say. And then it says, I simply don't care. So, unfortunately, there's people that are going to be upset. And then there's people that are going to say, I don't want to talk about the dead. So, OJ was such a jerk to the Goldmans and the Browns. Well, he did a lot of things to a lot of people. And it brings me to say that he even lied about himself having cancer. It would have been nice for him to let his family or people grieve if they were going to grieve about it. And that kind of shows you who he is, even in his dying moments, that he lied about it and didn't, just couldn't tell the truth. So Caitlyn Jenner says good riddance, and you can see hashtag OJ Simpson. And it got 33,000 views. That was just 8:41 this morning. We're at 9:27. So I don't think he ever told them. He definitely didn't tell the media. I don't think you missed anything. I can let me go back to this and then look at this screenshot here. If you can see that, there is a note from, I believe it's the family, OJ Simpson, the real OJ. It's his account. And it says, on April 10th, our father, Orenthal James, which is O.J. Simpson, succumbed to his battle with cancer. So maybe they did know. He was surrounded by his children and grandchildren. During this time of transition, his family asks that you please respect their wishes for privacy and grace, the Simpson family. So he was still loved. He definitely didn't serve his time. If he did that. However, in his last years, he was kind of quiet. He stayed low key after he got out of all the jail and stealing things. And Carly, we're going to play everybody's thing. You say, I don't care, dead or not. Personally, I feel bad for his family if they cared about him, and that's about it. Right. Exactly. We don't know that he did that. We innocent until proven guilty. And guess what, guys? He did not get convicted ever. So I mean, at this point, I think we're never just going to know. We won't know if he did that to his ex-wife and to Ron Goldman. I'm going to share this real quick because everyone that came in late and maybe some other people will come on. You guys can do the rewatch crew, but let's play this real quick. Okay.
Account saying that he was surrounded by his family. They asked for privacy and grace during their time of transition. You know, you may recall that Simpson made NFL Hall of Fame after an 11-year career with San Francisco and Buffalo. He was also infamously at the forefront of a major criminal trial in the 1990s after he was accused of murdering his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. Simpson was later acquitted on all of those charges, but perhaps it overshadowed any of his accomplishments, whether it be in football or in broadcasting. He did later, though, serve time in prison for a robbery attempt. He served 9 years in a Nevada prison after trying to reclaim some of his memorabilia. After the acquittal connected to the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, he was found liable for wrongful death and owed millions of dollars.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Gail King here in New York. We have just learned this morning that O.J. Simpson has died.
Yeah, if you guys want to watch this, I can watch it for a little bit with you. We can comment. We've got and the atrocious book. In that atrocious book, wrote about how he would have done it. You mean he wrote about how he would have done it, right? Anything for money. And, you know, I don't believe that he was innocent, but we don't know if he was guilty. So let's see what they talk about here on this special breaking news report.
At the age of 76, his agent said he had been suffering from prostate cancer. Now, this news comes on social media from the family of the former star running back who was tried and acquitted for the murder of his ex-wife and then found liable for her death in a lawsuit. Simpson's life story is extraordinary. He grew up poor in San Francisco, became a sports legend who won the Heisman Trophy while playing for the University of Southern California back in 1968.
Now, this is going to help you guys to understand, for those of you that may be younger and didn't see all of the ruckus that went on in O.J. Simpson's life. He was a major hero to a lot of people and in football, but his personal life crossed over. And, you know, I got to say, people that play football and they take hard hits, boxers, look at Aaron Hernandez, people like that, something happens to their brain. It's a real thing. I can look that up and tell you what the name of it is, or someone can tell me in chat. Real things happen when you get hit that hard and people snap. So I'm not giving him an excuse, but we don't know.
And set records in the NFL and then moved into acting and TV work. He was one of the most desired commercial endorsers in the 1970s and 80s, but his career fell apart in 1995 when he was accused of stabbing his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and a friend of hers, Ron Goldman, in her home in Los Angeles. He was arrested after a long, infamous police chase that lasted for hours. After one of the most controversial trials in recent memory, Simpson was found not guilty of both murders. Goldman's family then sued O.J. Simpson, and a jury ordered him to pay $33 million in a wrongful death judgment.
I don't think
that was not the end of his legal troubles. In 2008, he was convicted in a kidnapping and robbery scheme involving some of his own memorabilia. He served 9 years in prison.
Do most of you guys know this? You may not have known he just died, but do you know a lot of this true crime stuff that went on behind, well, I guess it wasn't behind the scenes, but if you weren't paying attention, then you wouldn't have known.
Before he was paroled in 2017. Joining me now by phone is journalist Ed Gordon, who covered the O.J. Simpson trial for BET.
Wow.
And he was the first journalist to interview Simpson after his acquittal. Ed Gordon, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gail.
Ed, I actually remember that day. I was watching that interview. I think the country was riveted to that interview because we all wanted to hear what O.J. Simpson had to say. What was your thought when you heard that he had passed away this morning?
I literally, Gail, am at an airport. I just got off the plane and checked my phone. Needless to say, I was getting all kind of calls and texts, and it is a bit surreal. I mean, we all can go at any moment. But to think about, as you read, who O.J. Simpson was, this star running back, arguably at his time, the greatest running back of all time in the NFL, then to become a pitchman and a movie star. And then, you know, the tragedy that befell the Goldman family and what it's become. And so I think back, Gail, as you know, how divided this country was based on that trial. It's extraordinary.
Ed, I still remember when that verdict came in. He's still proved to be, I think, up until the end, a very divisive character. At the time, it seemed to be divided among racial lines. You know, I remember there was a lot of celebration in the streets from some members of the Black community, and a lot of people were just in shock when the verdict came in, when he was acquitted. What do you remember about that time?
Well, I remember that specifically, and I also think it's important for us to say, Gail, that I think a lot of African Americans had their doubts as to whether he was innocent or not, and much of the cheering was not necessarily for O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, and I don't think this was an African American thing at all. I think that happens when you get somebody that's a hero and they're African American. You know, look at Bill Cosby. He was definitely somebody that people look up to, and he messed that up for a lot of people. So I think with O.J. Simpson, that happened, but I don't remember it being a racial divide, but I was young.
As much as it was for someone who, as misguided as this may sound at first glance, had beat the system, that African Americans had for so many years been railroaded into jail, that you finally had someone rich enough and powerful enough to maybe, and I underline that, evade the system. But it's an extraordinary time that we lived through. You know, you think about the white Bronco and the chase and all that led up to his arrest. And I don't know that we would be able to even think about the proportion of it today, simply because social media, think about this, Gail, had he been on the freeway, even though the helicopters followed him, he would have had so many camera angles from phones and everybody trying to be, you know, the reporter on the scene. Just an extraordinary time.
There it is, the Bronco, everybody.
You know, he was acquitted in that case, but there was forever still a cloud over O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
And how do you think he navigated that? Because, you know, many times he would still be walking in the streets. People were asking for his autograph, wanting to take a photo with him. And still there were others that saw him as a pariah.
That's a great question, Gail. I had been with him on a number of occasions after the fact. And what he would do is when he would see someone looking at him, he would quickly go to them and say hello to them before they could say anything. It was a disarming tactic on his part, if you will. So if he was afraid they were going to say something rude or vile, he would try to disarm them because he was a charismatic person. He was bigger than life in many instances. And so he would try to speak first, and he was, and some people will rail at this, but he was charming at times. And so he leaned on that charm to just.
Yeah, now he was charming, and he definitely, I think the charm worked for him at his trial. And he was a hero, people. He was a football hero. And yeah, he was African American, and there was not a lot that were superstars back then. So I think that heavily weighed on the trial and the impact of the verdict. CTE is what I wanted to tell you about, the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, whatever. Anyway, CTE is what happens when people get hit in the brain too hard. It causes anxiety, it causes depression, and there's serious consequences of it. Scientists have shown that people that play contact sports are more likely to have this, and when they become anxious and they become let's say depressed, they're more likely to have fits of rage and anger. Just remember Aaron Hernandez. Very sad story. Okay, let's keep watching.
Disarm people.
Yeah, charming is not what the Goldman family feels about him, or many members. No, the Goldman family or the Simpson family. And I was always thinking about them during times like this.
Yeah, and it's hard to really kind of put your arms around this. It didn't bring any of those people back. It didn't ease the pain of those families who still today grieve the loss of those two people.
And he always, Ed, even right up until the end, he always maintained that he was innocent.
He did maintain that, as you say, until the day he passed away. And He was quick to suggest that he always was, in his words, searching for the killer. There were those who will suggest he never did that. But he did maintain he had absolutely nothing to do with it. And as hard as that is to believe for many people, and you think about this, Gail, for as long as it's been since those gruesome murders, O.J. Simpson remained up until he died the face of a murderer for many. Even today, there will be comedians who will use him as the butt of a joke. And so it was.
Yeah, Carly brings a good point. I wonder if he did a deathbed confession. I kind of doubt it that he would want to bring his family down right before he died, but I don't think they would even tell us. And maybe they will. Maybe they'll get desperate for money and they'll make something up even and say, my dad told me before he died, or my whoever was around him. That's an interesting point, but I don't think we'll actually ever know. Now, this is really a long interview. I'm just going to cover some of it. Let's listen to this. It's interesting to hear from this guy that was covering the case of the Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman deaths.
It was something that stuck to him until his last days.
Ed Gordon, thank you so much. When I got the news, listen, we had heard that he was sick and that had been sick for a while, but it was still very jarring to get the news because it just brought back all the memories about that trial. And I still, to this day, keep thinking about the tragedy of the Simpson family and the Ron Goldman family. Thank you, Ed Gordon. Thank you for talking with us this morning.
Let's see.
Just a reminder,
let's go a little bit farther into.
Ricky, I want to talk about another personality that was kind of forced into the spotlight, the judge in that case, Lance Ito. And I'm trying to recall sort of how I felt about him at the time.
So, Carly, you were talking about Lance Ito earlier, and that happens when you get on a high-profile case. You're forced into the spotlight, and some people retire from that, and they just can't take it. Let's listen to this.
But I think he received some criticism, which is inevitable when you're dealing with such a high-profile case.
Ito is really the primary reason why many states and perhaps the federal system as well has tried to keep cameras out of the courtroom. If anyone was enamored with celebrity at the time, it was Judge Lance Ito. And one of the clocks that we would keep track of at Court TV was the clock of how many minutes per day that court was actually in session with the jury, and how many minutes per day Judge Ito was in his chambers having conferences, that's a kind way of putting it, with celebrities. I remember the day, for example, that Barbara Walters came to court, and so he invited her back, and they had conversations, and everyone is waiting for the trial to continue on. He was really fascinated with his own.
3 or 4 more minutes.
So interesting. You're bringing it all back to me now. I want to bring in one more voice for us. Bring in Entertainment Tonight co-host Nichelle Turner. She's joining us now on the phone. Nichelle, we have been talking about.
Yeah, this is a good. It's a good remembering of OJ trying to dispel things. We never are going to know unless he actually did tell someone, and then we might not know if it's true unless he had a recording somewhere or they found something. Now OJ Simpson dies at 76 after battling cancer. It was prostate cancer. He denied it to the media, so they just thought he was sick. The family probably did know, but we're remembering him for the good, the bad, the ugly, and just who he was. He still was a person. And we don't know. He didn't get convicted.
O.J. Simpson's life, but inevitably we're talking an awful lot about the trial, not just the crime, but also the cultural moment that occurred during this trial and the evolving cultural character, I guess, of O.J. Simpson. It's sort of hard to sum up, and it's really hard to explain if you weren't kind of really paying attention back then, because the way people have felt about O.J. Simpson has changed radically since his time on the football field to now his death.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you think about that trial. I think it was watched by about 150 million people on Court TV. And that was, in the inception.
And we didn't have social media back then. I guess the social media was the news. There was no cell phones. There was no internet back then. There was, it was the, the black screens and with the orange letters. I can't even remember what that's called, but I was very young in this case. It sucks that they're highlighting him being in jail clothes, and most of the things that he did that were good got washed out by the things that he may have done that were bad.
Really cemented court TV and what courtroom, playing out on television, what that looked like for us. It was the public's fascination with it. I'm actually watching, video of this trial on television right now. And
Wow.
It was so fascinating at the time because, yes, we had this figure who was beloved on the football field and then also had made his mark in Hollywood. I mean, he, was in several Naked Gun movies, and
There
he
you
was
go,
in the
guys.
Towering Inferno, and
Naked
he had
Gun.
all the Hertz rental car ads of OJ running through and jumping over, things in the airport. All of those things is how we saw him, and we saw him as a beloved figure. And then here you had this just incredible shift, and we're all seeing this play out in front of us on television, and it became also a bit of why
he is in the Hall of Fame, and we're listening to this, watching, and just talking thoughts. But what sucks is that he went and stole his memorabilia back from somebody after he sold it because he needed money, or I don't know if they took it away and somebody repossessed it because he owed money. But that really killed it that he did that. That does suck that he went and stole that from somebody that got it fair and square. They paid for it.
we are such a voyeuristic society, and in Hollywood as well, because we were consuming all of this on a daily basis, and no one could get enough.
Yeah,
no one could get enough of seeing this.
It's so true. And, we talked a little bit earlier with Ed about how divisive this trial was, how it was a moment in time when, it was a moment in time when the LAPD was under a lot of criticism for the relationship that it had with African Americans. It just seems stunning when I think about how there were cheers when he was acquitted and how that changed over time. But can you kind of bring us back to, how you were feeling or how people felt when that acquittal came down?
I remember where I was. So I was a college student, and I was working in a retail store when it was handed down, when the verdict was handed down, and I remember just silence. Because I was also working in a place where there weren't a lot of minorities, and it was just silence. But what I remember distinctly was that split screen of people watching, and there were people, I think it was like in Inglewood, and then there were a video of
they were predicting, and now I do remember being a racial issue, because I was in Los Angeles at the time where I lived, and this happened in close to that area. And you know what? People were predicting that if he was found guilty, there was going to be a riot. So I do remember that. And, that was because he was Black. That's interesting how they come together like that and they can riot. But when it comes to other things, sometimes they just can't get it together. And it makes things look bad when you do that. So, there was going to be a riot if he was found guilty, and they were anticipating, they had lots of cops. If you didn't watch this, you check out parts now.
Of people somewhere else, and it was like Black people and white people, and just the dichotomy of the two reactions. I still remember that burned into my head of how when you saw the community of mostly minority people, there were cheers, and then the community of white people, they were sitting stunned. And you're right, that sentiment has changed over time, but it was all part of what the division was in the country at the time, because we had seen, the Watts riots, we had seen the 92 riots in LA from Rodney King, and we had seen like these images of police brutality and what people felt like, how Black men had been treated. So then here you have this Black man who may not have been connected to the Black community and of his own doing and of his own saying, may not have really been connected to the Black community at that time, but the Black community still felt like
And I agree. The Black community did. Doomer Sterling, you don't have to be sorry to say I'm sorry, but he took a piece of a lot of people. He can come in contact, including his family. Don't apologize for your comments. Thank you.
One of our own, and they connected to the police brutality part of it, and what they saw as an injustice in a lot of ways with the system, and they connected to OJ in that way. And so we saw all of that playing out. And I remember even conversations within my own family, how people were split. And how, some people would say, oh, he didn't do it. He was set up, because we also saw Mark Furman, who, a lot of people in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they did say that. MFAR, they said that because it was a black and white divide. Nicole Simpson had blonde hair, and this was a black man. And then Ron Goldman was like the whitest of white guys. And Goldman, I don't know what, but the skin color. So people were really upset and saying that he was framed. And so luckily he didn't get not guilty, because there would have been more damage done.
Feel like won that case for the defense in his actions and his words and what he was doing. And people really did feel like the police had planted evidence. But then on the other side, you saw people saying, guys, let's be logical here.
Absolutely.
Look at all of this evidence, and why is he on this, why are they chasing him? And also remember that day of the low speed chase with the Bronco.
Here's a good question, everybody. Why was he running? I was a little kid when I watched this, and I was like, why would somebody that was not guilty be running and doing a high speed chase, putting people in harm's way? Cops could die. People could just die in general and random. Why was he doing that? And I was a kid. So if as an adult, did anybody think, why was he running? Why were they chasing him? But why was he running? Yeah. Interesting.
The NBA finals were on the air at that time. And it really, there was a split screen on television of the NBA finals in a picture-in-picture and the OJ chase. And they didn't really know what to do. Do they air the NBA finals or do they air the OJ chase? I mean, it was such huge news at that time.
Man, Nichelle, you hit on so many layers, just sort of taking me back in time. And, you sort of said this very quickly, but you talked about O.J. Simpson's connection to the African-American community at the time. Mm-hmm. And that's another layer, right? He's married to this beautiful white woman. He's living in a very wealthy section of L.A. And many of the people that he's associating with are white. And there was a conversation about, geez, when the chips are down, when your back is against the wall, now you're remembering.
You come back to the Black community.
Exactly. Yeah. Which also led to kind of.
That's what I was trying to get at earlier. Nothing had to do with that. He's married to this beautiful white woman. Her hair was blonde. It looks like she dyed it. But the thing is, it's this, powerful football player. He's a hero. And so a lot of people got upset and they started bringing the racial, issue into this whole thing, which I think they just brought that to help him because they really did love him. People loved him. And I think that had an impact on the jury. I can't say for sure, but you guys tell me what you think.
Of a division within the community about how they felt about this case, about O.J. Simpson. I want to acknowledge that Lana Zach has come, and she's sitting right next to me. Lana, it's really good to see you. It's great to have you here. We were talking earlier, pretty much everyone remembers where they were when this verdict came down, right? And for me, I was still in school, but we were not going to class, and they had put a TV up in kind of like the general meeting area, because I was in college, the general meeting area, and everyone was transfixed.
Right,
and
we were
I
all
was in Canada.
We were all kids, and we were all watching this,
right.
and we didn't actually have the guidance to try and process what was happening.
I did process that we were afraid if he was not, or if he was found guilty, we were getting ready for riots. I do remember that. I was in LA and everybody was preparing for the riots to happen. They had lots of police force. They had their, their body armor. They had it all. They were ready for a riot to happen. And then he was found not guilty and people were happy.
But we knew that race was involved, social justice was involved, questions about how Black and brown people interact with the police.
Yep.
All of that was something that we as children were trying to navigate during this time. And then our feelings about that became even more complicated as O.J. Simpson continued to live his life. And as you mentioned before, the book that he published, If I Did It, and how that also added so much to us as a society as we're trying to process and understand it. And I'm so grateful that we have Ricky Kleeman here, who was part of trying to help a nation understand that. Ricky, how much were you obviously acutely aware of these other conversations that were happening at kitchen tables?
Johnny Cochran, got famous from this. I brought him up the other day, and Carly said Jose Baez, but in that picture right before Johnny Cochran, if you look at O.J. Simpson, he looked very cocky, and that glove fitting thing, I wasn't buying it.
And lunchroom tables in some cases, and how this trial actually addressed that at times in the courtroom.
I think that all of us who were working on the case live in Los Angeles on this whole block of scaffolds where each network had a set up in the air, that we would also meet late at night. We would get done around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And we would tend to have a great deal of our conversations because our life was all in common. So we shared stories that we heard from family. We shared stories we heard from friends. And of course, we also all read the news. And so we really understood that these conversations were happening around the country. And of course, amongst us, the anchors and reporters, these conversations were happening with us. I had the privilege of anchoring and having as my guests some of the finest lawyers from the greater Los Angeles area who would be up with me for 2 or 3, sometimes 4 hours.
So I was in Los Angeles, and that's where I was at the time. I lived in Los Angeles until I was 14 years old. So just wanted to interject real quick. It was Los Angeles, and the feeling was that of doom if he was found guilty.
Hours at a time, sitting up on the scaffold. And when we were not on camera, because we were watching the case, we would also converse. And you really saw that many of the lawyers and academicians who were guests were torn, because you could look at the case in terms of just prosecution and defense, and you could also look at the case in a much deeper way, which was about society. And it was also the thought of how the public viewed the police at the time and how the African-American public in Los Angeles was truly an oppressed population.
Yeah, Rodney King.
You had the police culture at that time, which was anything but good. And then you had the African-American population, their culture, who feared the brutality, who feared the corruption.
And Rodney King, everybody, the Rodney King beating was a game changer. That's like the George Floyd thing that happened. All of these things they're historical.
One of the things I remember best of the discussions about that was we as people participating in explaining the case to America, we were given the copies of the discovery that would come out, that would be made public. And one of the things we saw was all the information about Mark Furman's hearings to get a disability to go off the job. So if we had it, the defense had it. And so when F. Lee Bailey cross-examined Mark Furman on the witness stand, and here Mark Furman is the detective who is being accused of planting the glove on O.J. Simpson's property. And F. Lee Bailey knows, because he's read what I've read, which tells about the words that Mark Furman has used as to why he feels he should no longer have a badge and a gun. So when F. Lee Bailey asks, have you ever used the N-word in the past? years. There was only one principal answer, because it was all about why he wanted to get that disability. And Mark Furman lied. Understand? And F. Lee Bailey had him dead to rights. So what you saw was being reflected in the living rooms, in the bedrooms of people around the country. Another thought I had about that was, we knew that people around the country who were working during the day, they would tape the trial. And when they came,
Yeah, and this was taping, like tape recording everybody. So we're at about 40 minutes. I wanted to come on here. I still have to get to work. I still have an episode coming later with all of the things from that have happened with Sebastian Rogers. I'm going to tell you the real deal today. I'm going to give you the updates. Everybody's speculating about what's going on. I'm going to tell it like it is, like I normally do. I need you to hear this. I need everybody to hear what's going on and where we are. And then if we have time, we'll listen to the interview from the Chronicles of Olivia later. But everybody take a moment of silence for O.J. Simpson as a human. O.J. Simpson died at 76 years old after battling with prostate cancer. We're going to wrap up with listening to her final thoughts, and then we will just wrap up. I just wanted to come on real quick and talk to the crime crew and let you know.
came home at night. They would watch the trial at night. So for years after that, all of us who were simply the people who explained the trial to the public, we were seen on the street as, oh, that's the man or the woman who was involved in the O.J. Simpson case. So it changed our lives. And what we need to remember is that we are merely chroniclers of history.
And remember, if you went on trial, whether you did it or not, and you got found not guilty, you wouldn't want to walk around having to deal with that your whole entire life, especially if you were innocent. So unpopular or not, this man has died at 76 of cancer. May he rest in peace, and his family.
The history was made on that terrible night when Nicole Brown and Rongoldman were savagely murdered. The fact was, history was made on the day of the O.J. Simpson verdict. I'm really proud that I was able to help educate people in America at a time when they hungered for the real analysis of cases. I think in many ways, we may see that again this year.
Right. Okay.
Had you at the beginning.
All right. Well, thank you very much for CBS News and everybody that came on today and helped us to show you all what happened. OJ dies at 76. I think he had a pretty good life, and a lot of people still supported him. May he rest in peace. And thank you everyone for being here. If you came in late, I'll see you later on, 6:30 p.m. And we're going to go over the real deal of the Sebastian Rogers. Not just go over it. We're going to go over the new stuff that everybody's speculating on, and we're going to dispel it. Emily53, please hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel. You want to say he wanted to die a legend, and I can bet he didn't confess to Nicole and Ron's demise. I still believe he did it. He's as guilty as Casey Anthony. And I agree with you 1,000% that he did not confess because he did not want to be looked at like that. Just like he didn't tell them that he had cancer. He didn't want to tell the media. He didn't want to look weak. He didn't want to look fragile. I agree. Amanda Staley, you say we all go in the end, and we didn't kill. Wait, didn't he kill his wife? He was found innocent. So I don't know. We just, if you go to the rewatch crew, you can watch this after. I am Two Bear. Gotta be the cog in the American dream and go to work. Yes, I do. Me too. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And you're doing taxes today. Good luck with that. Good luck to everybody today. I'll see you again at 6:30 Pacific Standard Time. And I love each and every one of you. I wouldn't exist without you.
Guilty of crime.
I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed my content, please share this video, like, and subscribe. You can also follow me over at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, or Gmail. If you'd like to donate to my channel, you can use Cash App or Venmo or PayPal. Thank you very much in advance. Guilty of crime.
Are you guilty?